One, go ahead.
All right. Hello. Hello, everyone. Can you write in the chat if you can hear me, see if everything's okay, so we can start? I'll wait a couple seconds. Okay, sounds good. All right, so welcome to this workshop. So this will be a very introductory workshop of the Akash console. So we'll do a demo and see how you can deploy, and hopefully have some tips on how you can use the Akash console to deploy on the Akash network and help on your hackathon. And for future viewers, that whenever the hackathon is closed, hopefully this also serves as like some introduction on and overview of the console. So I'll try to make it as generic as possible. There's echo. Let me know if there's echo. I'll keep going and see if I need to adjust something. All right, so this is the Akash console. So if you go to console.akash.network, you'll be presented with this page. This is the home page. So this offers an overview of how your account looks, as well as a starting point for your experience with the console and with Akash network. As you can see here, you have like a balance of your account, how much AKT you have or USDC, and what the deployments are spending, and so on. So like a billing overview of of your Akash account. Next, on the menu, we have deployments tab. Here you will be able to see deployments and go into detail on each of them. We'll dive deeper into this page once we create our first deployment. Right now it's empty. I don't have any active deployments. The next one is a more like on your face. This is the template page. So this is where you'll find all sorts of pre-configured deployments. And these are all managed by the community. So you can also contribute to keep this up to date and relevant to developers and the Akash network users. And this can also serve as a starting point for your deployments. What does this mean? So let's say you are developing your applications and you need MongoDB. You go here, Mongo, and you'll have a pre-configured template running Mongo. So anything really that you can imagine is here. If not, and you want for it to be here, either just request it or do yourself a pull request and have whatever software you want running as a pre-configured template on the Akash network. We have all sorts of applications and software here. For instance, databases, we have Redis. I'm pretty sure we might have Postgres as well. Here, yeah, we have Postgres, game servers, really anything that you might need and is easily Dockerized. You can find here. If not, create a pull request, and it will be available. We also have the SDL builder. I see in the chat that some people are not hearing.
Yeah, I'm checking on that. Give me one moment.
All right, it seems it's great now. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so you can submit multiple projects in the same PR. I would suggest for like ease of review and faster approval, I would say like do one each in each separate pull request, so it's easier for us to review and approve and have it available on the console. So the next tab here is the SDL builder. So this is they are also saying echo, so I'm not sure.
I'm working on this. Yeah.
So as for the SDL builder, this is basically a utility that you can use to build your own SDL. SDL here stands for Stack Definition Language, and it is used to basically define your stack on an Akash network deployment. So for instance, here, my deployment can have a name. I'll have some resources, CPU, GPU, I can specify my memory, ephemeral storage, as well as environment variables. If you're familiar with Docker, this will be very similar to what you would expect. You'll also have, you will be able to expose some ports, specify the number of replicas, and specify which token you will be paying in, and a bunch of other options that you can go deeper in your configuration. And then you'll have a preview of your SDL. We'll dive deep. I'll dive a little bit into the SDL format once we start deploying. But for now, just imagine this creates a YAML file that you can use to deploy on the network. And this utility just helps you do that. Then we have the providers overview. This is an overview of the network resources. So here you are able to see a map with these dots, which represent, each one represents a provider. And a provider is, imagine a cluster of machines working together to compute stuff. So what these are really, for those more technical, these are Kubernetes clusters with some special software called operators that run and interact with the Akash network blockchain, and do all sorts of transactions, and they have other services for inventory, exposing metrics and all that. But at its core, at the infrastructure level, it's a Kubernetes cluster. So these dots represent that cluster, which can be composed of several nodes, but each individual node is not represented in this map, only the clusters. You can see also an overview of the network resources. Okay. So for instance, CPU, we can see that we have 3,000 used, but around 20K available CPUs, and for GPUs, we are quite with quite a high usage right now. Memory is fine, storage as well. And here you have a more detailed list of these providers, so you can dive deeper into each one of these providers, and you have an overview of attributes such as the uptime, the number of leases that this provider has currently, the CPU for the provider, GPUs, which type of GPUs that provider is offering, as well as memory, disk, and whether that provider is audited or not. So this basically what audited represents, and we get this question quite a lot, is an audited provider is one where there was some due diligence done, so we can make the console users and the Akash network users in general more, how can I say this, more confident that they are deploying on a trustworthy provider. Because as the network is permissionless and completely decentralized, anyone can become a provider and anyone can deploy on any provider. So this is a way to make some due diligence and offer a more tailored service, let's say. Then we have a for answers and questions page. I'm not going to dive through this. You can have a read if you want. And we also have a settings page where you can have some more advanced use cases, such as like authorization for AuthZ and fee grants if you want to grant permission for other accounts to spend on behalf of one source account, for instance. And then at the bottom, we have some other resources, and you can go here and just explore and click on these links and find a bunch of resources, price comparison, statistics, whatever you want. Okay, so we have an overview of how the platform looks. Let's start with a simple deployment, the traditional hello world deployment. This will be not too crazy, but will give you an idea of the deployment process, and you'll be able to see a hello world page. And then we'll dive into a more detailed and more complex deployment. But as I said, the goal here is to be very introductory, so you are familiar and you get familiar with all these features on the console. So let's start with deploy. When you click deploy, you are presented with options to deploy. You could build your own, but let's start with an hello world. Okay, you'll be presented with the YAML, but you can also toggle the builder view, which is a more graphical, similar to the STL builder, more graphical view that will allow you to configure the same parameters, but with some visual hints. But as for this example, this is quite simple. Let's just go to the YAML, and so I can explain as well a little bit about what you are seeing. So here, if you are familiar with Docker, this will be, or Kubernetes, this will be very, very straightforward. But what we have here is we are specifying our services. We have a service called web. This is an arbitrary name. It can be whatever, like hello if you wanted, but let's keep it web. The image, this is the Docker image of the hello world that we want to show. You can expose some ports. So what we are doing here is we are exposing the container port 3000 as a port 80. Port 80 is a special port here, as it will give back an ingress URL for you to connect. If you used another port, let's say like 27,000, you would get a port forward to this port. For port 80, you get an ingress URL to connect to. And then we have profiles. Profiles define compute resources for web. This is where you will specify which resources you want to ask the network. So how many units of CPU, memory, storage, GPU. On storage, you have ephemeral storage, which is what's defined here, but you can also specify persistent storage. And then you'll have a placement. What this does is basically specify the amount of micro AKT that you are willing per block, that you are willing to pay per block at most. So providers that charge more than this will not bid on your deployment. And this is and here in counts, you can specify the number of replicas. Let's keep it to 1. Okay, so this is a very, very brief overview of the SDL. Of course, you can go very deep into this stack definition language and be creative and create all sorts of specific configurations. So let's create deployment. We'll specify the amount of AKT that we want to start the deployment with. The default is half AKT. We'll continue. So now it's basically broadcasting a transaction on chain. I see a question here. Can I deploy a Hugging Face model and also another app that provides APIs for that model together? Or do I need to deploy the model separately and then use that instance to create a separate API app? You can deploy two apps together. And I can show you after we deploy this and go deeper. But if you saw when I said we could specify an arbitrary name for the container that we want to run, you can specify another one. So basically, you can specify 2 containers, and those can have communication between them. So you could have your Hugging Face model and imagine like a UI and have them deployed together. Okay, so now what we've done is we've created the intention of deploying on the Akash network. So we created a deployment, but it's not yet ready to use. What happened was providers received received a block and saw that someone wanted to create a deployment, me, and created bids on that deployment. So for the resources that I asked, these are the bids of the providers. So we have some charging 3 USD, some charging 28 cents per month. And now we can choose where we want to host. So let's say I want to go with the cheapest one, but that's audited. So that would be this one. Okay. This one is in Texas, the United States, has a very decent uptime. So I'm happy with this. I'll accept this provider's bid. Okay, I'll approve the transaction and wait. Okay, it's deploying. What happens with deploying is we create a lease, what we call a lease. It's a lease between me and the provider. And then after that's agreed on, I send the manifest to the provider directly. Okay, so as I said, this is a Kubernetes cluster. So what we are seeing here, for those familiar with Kubernetes, are Kubernetes events, nothing too fancy. So my application is running on a pod. I have container logs. So this is a Next.js application. It's all running. I should have access to it. I can also have a shell access and update the deployment as well if I need to update something. I can go to leases. You'll see I have a ORE here, and I can click it, and I'll be presented with an hello world page. As I said, this is a randomly generated URL on the ingress of the provider that I selected. Okay, and this is available to me because I chose to expose port 80. If I chose another port, I would have simply a port forward. All right, I can see an overview. I have one pod available because I only asked for one. And the resources. This here, for those wondering, it's technical and it's related to the question that we had before regarding two containers inside the same deployment, but it's a more advanced use case. And we also have the shell access that I mentioned, so I can do commands here. Okay. Here on top is where you have your billing information. You can see that I have a balance of $1, more or less. I also have my deployment is active. It shows me how much time left my deployment has. This is a very cheap deployment, so I have around 2 months with only $1. This is an ID of each deployment on the network. And yeah, and as I said, I have a balance on this deployment, but one of the things that I can do is add further funds to the deployment. Because what happens here, and this is a little bit more technical into how the protocol works, whenever you create a deployment, a new account is created that we call the escrow account. It's basically, you can think of it like a wallet where the provider can get funds from and we can deposit from funds to. So the provider doesn't have to access your wallet. This wallet in the middle serves as like the middleman for those transactions. And what I'm doing here is basically depositing funds on that escrow wallet. So let's say I deploy 0.1, and we'll see that we'll change the balance. So I changed the balance, and you can see now that the time left is around 3 months. Okay, this is it for a very, very simple deployment. And now I can simply, before closing, let me go back here and show you the deployments page that was empty before. Now has a list of your deployments. I only have one. And yeah, I can simply close this deployment. Whenever I close the deployment, the funds on the escrow wallet will go automatically to my wallet. Okay. As you can see, I still have my funds. I haven't spent much. I only paid for what I used. All right, so to go and to show a little bit more, let's try something here. Let's try to deploy, we can try this one. Let's try. I would need the token there. Let's see what I can deploy. Let's say, for instance, for your hackathon, you need a Mongo. Actually, I'll show you some example WordPress. So as the question in the chat mentioned, what if I have two services that I need to connect? So Hugging Face model and then like a front end to serve it, and have those two connect and communicate with each other. WordPress has a similar setup. So you have the WordPress server and you have a database, a MariaDB, and those need to communicate in order for this WordPress deployment to work properly. And you can see here, and this is a little bit more complex setup, but as you can see here, I have two services. I have the WordPress service and the database service. What I do here is basically specify my my WordPress container. I have the image. It's a generic, simple WordPress image. I say it depends on the database service. I expose some ports with some HTTP options. So I'm seeing here port 80. I'm exposing port 80 as well as forwarding to port 80 on the container because WordPress is listening on port 80. I specify environment variables, dbhost, user, password. This is for the connection of WordPress. And then I have it here parameters. These are for persistent storage. These are more complex. But if you need to know more, go to the documentation and you'll see how persistent storage works and how you can use it. We have also the database container, very similar to the WordPress, but it does specifies the MariaDB image, exposes some ports, and sets the environment variables for the credentials and the database. And has a persistent storage as well for the data, because it's a database. We need to keep it persistent. We don't want for whenever the container restarts for our data to be lost. And then we have the resources, the compute resources. Here you are seeing the special persistent storage setup where I'm setting a beta 3 type storage. If I'm not mistaken, beta 3 stands for NVMe, but you also have SSDs and HDDs. I think it's beta 2 and beta 1 respectively. And you also have RAM, which is very common when you deploy AI workloads to share memory, basically. Okay, and this is pretty much it. So the same for the container DB. We have these special attributes here. What this says that I only want to receive bids from providers that are signed by these two addresses. So let's assume these two are auditors, and I'll only be getting bids from providers that are signed by these two. And you'll find these quite often in many of the deployments. So for an example's sake, let's deploy this and show you that it can be done. Okay, again, I'm waiting for bids. So the providers just received my intention to deploy and are now bidding on the requests that I asked. Okay, let's deploy, let's choose Europlots to deploy this workload. We'll accept the bid, approve. Okay, and it's deploying. As you can see, the pod just started. I should have logs. So these are showing database and WordPress logs. I can query just specific logs. Let's say I just want WordPress logs. Okay, I can go to my leases. And here I have a fresh WordPress installation that I can then use and start hosting my website on Akash network. This is also a very, very simple example, and we are running at a very, very low cost for the resources that we are requesting. So we are talking about 5 CPUs and 6 gigs of RAM for around $12 a month. And now one question you might have is, okay, but I have this weird URL and I want to have my WordPress personal website. How do I change it to use my own personal domain? And that's possible. One of the things that you need to do is to go here, specify. So on the accept option in the expose field of your SDL, you can specify the domains that you accept on the ingress. So let's say this was like my personal website.com. And what you need to do then is basically go to your register or your DNS server, and you'll create a CNAME record pointing to the provider address. Okay. This is very, very useful if you want to host your personal websites or really any website that you don't really want to have the automatically generated URL. Just remember, you need to put the accept option here with the domains that you want to accept, so the ingress knows where to send the request. Whenever the server receives a request for this, it knows that it's to connect to your deployment. Okay, I think I've covered most of the basic and intermediate features of the console. From here, you can try all sorts of complex deployments, AI models. I will deploy an AI model to show you, but I think it needs the Hugging Face token even to just start. So, and I don't have one right now, but you can try for yourself. I would suggest the Llama 3.2. It's more lightweight, and you can deploy for very low cost. And it's quite easy. It just works. And I think there was a workshop 2 days ago about it. So yeah, feel free to watch that one and deploy. All right, I think I went through everything. Let me know if you have questions in the chat and in Discord as well. If you have specific questions, feel free to ask. You can ask for me specifically as well. I'm always around there. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for those of you listening, feel free to, as he mentioned, ask any questions on Discord. You could drop them in the chat real quick. Otherwise, be sure to sign up for Akashathon 3. Submissions are due on December the 1st, and there's 4 challenge tracks with quite a lot of prize money at stake. So good luck, everyone, and thank you so much for presenting today.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone, and I'm looking forward to seeing your submissions.
All right, perfect. I will go ahead and end this call, and have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.